This is really interesting, huh? And I think this idea of threshold and energy is a really interesting one, because how do we interpret threshold, and what do we use to tell us when we're over threshold or when we're under threshold? What do we use to tell us when our horses are over threshold and when they're under threshold? What are we basing that assessment on? From a human perspective, many times we're basing it on how we feel, our subjective interpretation. This is my threshold. I'm in fight or flight. You'll hear people say, I'm angry, so I'm in the fight mode. I'm stressed, so I must be in my survival nervous system. And hopefully, as you continue to adventure down this path with me, you will start to gain an appreciation of how much difficulty we can get ourselves in through our subjective interpretation of what's what. So to my mind, threshold, this idea of threshold, can be useful, but it can also be confusing. It can also limit us in some ways, where we're constantly trying to avoid a certain feeling, right? Because we're interpreting that as taking us over threshold. And over threshold for many people is interpreted as, I feel uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable. I feel not calm. I feel the presence of sensation, which I am now interpreting as something dangerous for my body. It's taking my mind to a particular place. That is our interpretation of threshold. This is where starting to read your body signs in terms of structural changes becomes so useful, because just because you're busy, just because there's a lot going on, just because you might feel a lot of energy or sensation does not mean you're in your survival nervous system, does not mean that you're necessarily under threat. And being able to start to piece or pass these things out is really important, from decoupling the stories that we have about our capacity and our ability from the reality of what our body is communicating to us. Really, really important. The other thing is baby steps. So if we're constantly trying to keep under threshold, and threshold is based on our emotional state of being, if we're constantly trying to take things in baby steps, the other thing that can arise is that we immobilize ourselves. We get into freeze because we're always trying to be something that we're not. If we're concerned about something, chances are we already feel a little bit over threshold when we go into that situation. It's already starting to pick something in our bodies, which we are interpreting as alarming. And so what I suggest is not taking things in baby steps and not throwing yourself in the deep end, but I would suggest making your decisions based on the reality of the moment, rather than deciding what they're going to be like well in advance and what the plan is going to be. It's really useful to have a plan as long as you're willing to throw it into the ocean. Right? It's really useful to have a plan, to have direction, and to understand, I sense there's a bigger possibility for me in this situation, and this is the possibility, right? So the plan can be, this is where I want to direct my intention, right? This is where I want to have things go. But as soon as I start to control that direction, as soon as I start to control how I show up, that is where we get into our fight flight nervous system, because now I'm using all of these parts of my brain which aren't designed for that purpose. I'm trying to control my outcome, control my reaction, right? As soon as we try to control how something is done, this is where we get ourselves into trouble. So having a plan as far as this is what I would like to see happen, this is my intention, is very different to controlling how that plan unfolds. Does that make sense? There are two different beasts. Yeah. So the intention that we have approaching a situation determines how our state is within that situation. And so what I mean by that is, if I'm approaching my ride and I'm like, okay, I have to be really calm this ride. I have to have it together. My horse doesn't need it. It's not fair. I know they're fine. I'm the one that has to have it together. This is how I'm going to be, right? You are already in fight flight before you even get there, right? You're already in fight flight. It's just like if I'm going for a run and I'm going for a run because I need to lose weight or I want my body to be a certain way, I'm already in fight flight before I start running. right? That's just the matter of fact, because and now I'm trying to control the hows of my body. I'm trying to control the reactions. I'm trying to control my state of being. If I then approach my ride and go, you know what, let's see what happens today. Let's see what happens today. And I go out to my horse, and I do find that I have these cyclic experiences coming up to me, like I'm having the same, perhaps repetitive sensations, the repetitive stories, the repetitive interpretations of how I feel in a particular situation. And I can approach those in one of two ways, right? I can say, oh, here we go again. This is never going to happen for me. I'm useless. What am I even doing here? My horse doesn't deserve this. I don't have time for this. Like, the idea of not having time places so much urgency on us, even if that feels like our reality, right? Like, when we don't have time for something, all of a sudden there's a ticking container that we're operating in, and that really starts to create a different set of stress within the system. Yeah, because now we're trying to fulfill something within a time frame, and the brain doesn't understand the productive purpose of that. It's like, well, we're just doing it, aren't we? Like, we're going to do it if we do it. I remember an interview I listened to about writing and creativity, and there was someone in the audience, and she was listening to these two people talk about writing a book. And she said, well, that's all really well and good, but do you understand how old I'll be by the time I've gone through the process that you're describing? And she said, yes, the same age you'll be if you don't. And so it's exactly like that. It's like, we can be 40, 60, 70. We still have to do the same thing. Does that make sense? It's like, you can either do it or not do it. It's regardless of what you perceive to be the amount of time you have. You can either do it and age the same way, or not do it and age the same way. Like, the trajectory is the same. So it's just different in terms of how you show up and be like, right, well, what have we got here? What have we got here? So if I show up and I'm like, wow, my interpretation is that I'm shitting myself right now. Like, that's what's going on for me. And that's real. That is just what is expressing in this moment, right? So right now, how my body is showing up and my interpretation of that is creating anxiety in me. I'm labeling that as anxiety. And if I have the consciousness to recognize what's happening, I have choice in the cycle right now. Okay, I have choice. And so I can say, right now, I'm going to make a choice to focus on 2 points in my body, because I understand that choice has a particular outcome that it takes me towards. It gives my unconscious brain more information about this situation. And then after I've done that, I will take an action based on what I understand to be the best thing for me in the moment. And that action might be, you know what, I'm not going to ride right now, but I'm just going to walk my horse around the arena, and we're going to figure out things from there. And the difference between trying to keep under threshold and trying to take things in baby steps is, you're always assuming from that place that you are not going to be okay, that not okay is the start point. And we don't let ourselves be okay. We don't let ourselves be any different, because we've decided, when I show up for my horse, this is how I'm going to be. And you don't let yourself be new, which means that on Monday, I might be anxious, but on Tuesday, I might not be. I might be different. I might be a little bit different, which means there's another set of possibilities that's available to me on Tuesday that wasn't available to me on Monday. And on Tuesday, I will take a different set of actions that reflect that. And in the moment, I will decide, now is enough. Now is enough. But I will keep showing up, allowing myself to be different from the day before. Because if I presuppose that I'm always going to be the same, guess what? I always am going to be the same, because my mental template is activating that physiological response in my body. And now I find myself stuck in this Groundhog Day loop. So the leaps might not be huge leaps each day, right? But there is a difference. And if you can train yourself to notice the difference each day, you train yourself to notice the different set of possibilities available to you.